Well, the MCU is back with Captain America Brave New World, Anthony Mackie's first feature as Captain America after taking up the shield in The Falcon and Winter Soldier on Disney+. Now, truth be told, I'm a pretty big Marvel nerd. I do keep up with this stuff, and I'm always going to show up for when one of these movies come out. I'm not going to be one of those people that poo-poos over Marvel or says that IP is ruining cinema. I'm looking at you, Martin Scorsese. This is the fourth movie under the Captain America name, and while it aims to be a political thriller, it doesn't quite stick the landing. Before we get too far, I will be spoiling this movie. Not that there's much to spoil, but if you do not want to be spoiled for Captain America Brave New World, definitely stop this video, go see it, and then come back and finish this video. The plot revolves around President Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross, played by Harrison Ford, trying to broker a treaty over resources from the celestial Tiamat in the Indian Ocean. The big prize? Adamantium, a mineral that X-Men fans will recognize. Meanwhile, Samuel Stearns, aka the leader, played by Tim Blake Nelson, makes his return after being absent since The Incredible Hulk in 2008. Let's start with what works. The performances are solid across the board. Anthony Mackie continues to be charismatic and compelling as Sam Wilson. Harrison Ford adds a bit of weight and gravitas to the role of Thaddeus Ross, and Danny Ramirez shines as Joaquin Torres, who is presented in this movie as the new Falcon. Giancarlo Esposito shows up for a little bit as Sidewinder, the leader of the Serpent Society, and yeah, while the role feels a bit tacked on, Esposito's presence is always there to elevate things. I also have to give a massive shout out to Carl Lumbly, though his performance as Isaiah Bradley, who is another super soldier who has been mind controlled by the leader to assassinate the presidents, offered an emotional core for the movie. There's a prison scene where Sam goes to visit him after he's been arrested, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was starting to tear up. I also want to highlight the action in this movie. I've seen some people say that the action is kind of lackluster, and I think I'm going to buck against that. I actually particularly like the action in this movie. Particularly, there's this aerial naval battle that happens in the Indian Ocean around Tiamat, and I thought that the action choreography was actually very, very well done. It was visually engaging and it was tightly choreographed. I've definitely seen worse out there. I also think, as a highlight, the whole subplot involving Thaddeus Ross, who turns into the Red Hulk after secretly being dosed with gamma radiation disguised as heart medication by the leader. It's a cool idea that adds some layers to Thaddeus Ross as a character and raises the stakes, but like a lot of things in this movie, it definitely feels a little underdeveloped. All right, now let's get into the negatives. Where the movie falters is really, let's be honest, in its storytelling. The leader, played by Tim Blake Nelson, is introduced as this hyper-intelligent mastermind whose entire identity is built around outthinking everyone else. His return to the MCU after more than a decade carried the promise of a cerebral, layered villain, but unfortunately, the execution doesn't live up to that concept. Because Samuel Stearns' plans are elaborate, but they never feel as clever as the film wants you to believe. His manipulation of events hinges on predictions that seem too convenient, as if the script is bending over backwards to make him seem invincible rather than earning that through his actions. And what's even worse, his schemes are ultimately undone, not by brilliant counter strategy, but simply because Sam Wilson is just being Sam Wilson. It's almost like Stearns doesn't account for the most basic variable, human unpredictability. All right, cool. And the climax is where things truly kind of fall apart. After spending the movie building up the leader as an unstoppable intellectual force, I'm kind of putting that in quotes. The movie doesn't really do that. He essentially just gives up in the final act. There's no satisfying moment where Sam outsmarts him or physically overcomes him, nor is there a twist that recontextualizes Stearns' defeat. Instead, the resolution feels entirely anticlimactic, as if the movie didn't know how to handle a villain whose strengths are primarily mental rather than physical. And this whole mishandling robs the story of any real meaningful stakes. A great villain should challenge the hero in a way that pushes them to grow, but the leader fails to do that for Sam. His presence doesn't force Sam to question his ideals or adapt in a way that justifies his status as Captain America. As a result, the leader comes across as a little little more than a plot device. He's just a way to set the story in motion rather than a compelling character in his own right. And we also have to talk about the much teased transformation of Thaddeus Ross into the Red Hulk, which also falls a bit flat. And it's not exactly a surprise, given how much Marvel leaned into it in the marketing. What could have been a pretty jaw-dropping third act twist just kind of is there, and then it's over before you even knew it started. Like, I wasn't looking at my watch during this scene, but I'm pretty sure the final battle between Red Hulk and Captain America lasts about 6 or 7 minutes, and then it ends with Sam talking Thaddeus Ross down from being Red Hulk. I don't know. It really just kind of didn't work for me, especially since we get sort of teased throughout the movie that Thaddeus Ross wants Sam to reignite the Avengers. And if ever there was a time for the Avengers to show up, it would be the president turning into a hulking red monster. This movie definitely does feel like quite a bit of setup without any of the real follow through. And the biggest issue I think I have with this movie is Sam's character arc, or rather the lack of one, for a movie that's supposed to cement him as Captain America. We don't see much growth or personal change. Like, it feels like a missed opportunity to dig deeper into what it means for Sam to carry the shield. There is quite a touching moment where, I already did the spoiler alert, but where Bucky shows up after the new Falcon, Joaquin, is injured during the Tiamat battle, and Bucky and him have a nice heart-to-heart conversation about why Sam doesn't need the super soldier serum. And like, I don't know, I felt pretty underwhelmed by it. Especially when they use that scene as a setup to a punchline later in the movie when he's battling Red Hulk and he's like, I shouldn't have listened to Bucky. Bucky was wrong. I should have taken the serum. It's like, you're undercutting your message? Is that the message you're trying to tell us? Like, he doesn't need the serum, but maybe he's like, oh, maybe I do need the serum. It just feels like it's waffling. And at just under 2 hours, the film also just feels incredibly rushed. Oh, my cat is climbing up. I got some boxes behind me. Oh, buddy. I'm in the middle of doing a review for Captain America Brave New World. Anyway, where was I? This movie is just under 2 hours, and it feels incredibly rushed. There's big ideas like Ross's presidency and the global stakes of adamantium, but they don't get the depth that they need. And just going back to the climactic fight scene, the face-off with Red Hulk, it really doesn't leave much of an impact. And even the post-credit scene, which is like the sorriest excuse for a post-credit scene I've seen in quite some time. It's just teasing the future of the MCU projects like Doomsday and Secret Wars. It just feels more obligatory than exciting. It's essentially like, oh boy, you don't even want to know what's coming because something is coming. Something's coming for sure. It's coming. I told myself I wasn't going to be super negative during this video, but here I am. I feel like all of the positive things I have to say are kind of escaping me at the moment. I do want to touch on this idea briefly of the concept of a side quest of a movie. This movie has side quest energy through and through, and I don't necessarily think that that is a bad thing. I don't think that people need to be going into these movies and expecting universe-ending stakes. But the problem is, here I go again, I'm getting negative again. The problem is that a side quest still needs to do something. I feel like this didn't progress the overall story or even the micro stories within the story at all. Once again, I don't think Sam Wilson is a different person at the end of the movie than he is at the beginning of this movie. I'd have to really do some thinking about it, but what changes? And that's screenwriting 101. Your character has to change at the end of the movie. There's just an element of this movie that feels incredibly riskless. And I wonder why that is, especially when the MCU and Disney in general is kind of undergoing a bit of a crisis of identity. Since the firing of Jonathan Majors as Kang and the MCU having to do an entire reworking of what they were going for this next phase, it seems like they've been floundering. And I really struggle why. I think a lot of fans are wondering the same things. What's going on, guys? Look, we're going to show up for Sam Wilson as Captain America with vibranium wings fighting Thaddeus Ross's Red Hulk. We're going to show up to see that because we want to see it on the big screen. but like, it's gotta mean something. Anyway, I'm gonna give you my final thoughts so that I could wrap this up and not be incredibly negative anymore. Captain America Brave New World has its moments, thanks to some strong performances and a few standout action sequences. But it's weighed down by an uneven story and underdeveloped villains and overall underdeveloped characters. It's certainly not the disaster that many critics are making it out to be. It's a perfectly serviceable, middle of the road MCU movie and a serviceable action movie, and it's entertaining. But it just doesn't reach the heights that you hope for from a Captain America movie. Anthony Mackie, Harrison Ford, and the rest of the cast do what they can with the script that they're given, but the film honestly plays it too safe. It's a decent action movie, but as a Captain America movie, it falls short. And I just need to touch on something that I kind of brought up in my companion review. And this is a trend that I am seeing in movies that I think needs to absolutely stop. And I think it needs to change. And I think people need to sign petitions or request this change vocally and verbally, because I am sick and tired of being spoon-fed information in the movies that I watch. And this isn't just for the MCU. There are so many moments throughout this movie and throughout a lot of MCU movies and throughout a lot of action movies and throughout a lot of Hollywood blockbusters in general, where characters just say things to reassure the audience that they know what's actually happening. You know, it's hard to explain. I don't have any real examples of it, but it happens constantly throughout this movie, and it happens constantly throughout a bunch of movies that I feel like I've been seeing recently, where something will happen, and then just to confirm that it happened, a character will say it to another character and be like, just so you know, this happened. But it's really like they're telegraphing it to the audience so that the audience doesn't feel stupid. Or maybe it's that the movie just thinks that the audience is stupid, that they're not going to get it. I don't know. That was just a little mini rant I wanted to go on. But anyway, what did you think of Captain America Brave New World? Let me know down in the comments. Go follow me on Letterboxd. Go check out my podcast. And I'll see you all next time. Say bye to the people, Pierre. Say bye. Say bye to the people, Pierre. Say bye. He's a good boy.